Alright, I'm back with another Destiny 2 video, and today I want to address a question that's been on my mind for many years, but is sort of resurging with the Season of the Seraph storyline, especially the final cutscene, and that is, does the Traveler suck? um, I know there's been this fan theory forever that the Traveler is secretly evil and whatever, but for me this question isn't about whether the Traveler is evil, but whether or not it is just kind of a dick. And what I mean by that is, over the entire course of Destiny's lifespan, almost everything I have ever seen the Traveler do, or we have as Guardians, has felt like it has been wholly out of selfish interest. And this is a paracausal entity, which means it's essentially some sort of sentient orb. There's not I don't think a guy inside the Traveler piloting it around, I don't believe, but it is an object with sort of a will of its own and its own desires and motivations, and its main motivation is survival. And that means running from the darkness for, I don't know, millennia, millions of years, who knows how long this has been going on. But in doing that, it doesn't really care sort of the carnage it leaves in its wake or what it does to survive, and when you stop being useful to the Traveler or are not essential to its plans, you're gone. The entire concept of the Traveler to start with is, it arrived on Earth and then it started resurrecting people as Guardians and then gave them light powers. So there is this idea that the Traveler is benevolent, the Traveler has been worshipped in the past, because it gives us powers beyond what we could normally hope to create ourselves. And, that gave us the powers of Solar, Arc, and Void as the light-based powers. It gave us Ghost, which can infinitely resurrect us a million times. But the entire point of this is not that, it's just trying to make us better as a civilization. It's that it's trying to create sort of a zombie army of the dead to protect it from its enemies. And for a long time, its enemies were pretty much just the existing four races, all of which had their own motivations of whether trying to kill humanity or the Traveler or whatever, but now it is literally the darkness, although those four races are now kind of agents of the darkness, 5 if you count Taken, and we are still sort of fighting on the Traveler's behalf. It does seem like a lot of people have sort of lost faith in the Traveler, especially in the game itself, recently, and it has done many, many sort of inexplicable things over the years. So the examples that come to mind for me, okay, so the Traveler itself didn't have the biggest of presences in Destiny 1. It wasn't really the focus of the two big expansions, Taken King was all about Oryx, Rise of Iron was all about Siva, and this is back before Destiny had seasons, so there wasn't a whole lot of ongoing story in between that. It was sort of just this lore about the Traveler itself, and it was a pretty big mystery. And I don't even think Bungie at that point had figured out the whole light versus darkness conflict. We had this nebulous concept of the darkness, but it took a long time for Bungie to actually figure out what the darkness was, after release. Destiny 2, so we start Destiny 2 with the Traveler getting cut off by Ghaul's big light trapping device. And this cuts us off from the Traveler, showing how reliant we are on the Traveler's space magic to stay alive. But again, this isn't the Traveler being benevolent, it's just literally someone took your batteries out and now you must, go find new batteries. And eventually we recharge it and then we fight Ghaul. And sure enough, who's the one who works really hard to free the Traveler from this cage? Us. And then when, the Traveler is finally unleashed and Ghaul is trying to just gank its light for itself, the Traveler's finally no, screw that, I'm going to just liquidate you. And it nukes Ghaul, from head to toe. And that's sort of don't you dare try to steal my light, I give the light to who I want to give it to, and that's not you. Eventually, as time goes on, we just keep getting in these situations where it feels like the Traveler should be doing more than it does. Okay, so it also in the Red War, we have the death of the Speaker. The Speaker is supposed to be this entity, in the tower that communicates with the Traveler. That is not really true. He says he does not hear things from the Traveler, and the Traveler leaves him his most devoted servant to be, forsaken and killed. Does nothing to stop the death of the speaker. And then as time goes on, we keep finding ourselves in situations where there are these like catastrophic, potentially humanity-ending threats, and then the Traveler just does literally nothing about it. You will recall the Season of the Worthy, which had the Almighty about to crash into Earth, the last city, but the Almighty is big enough where that would probably be a planet-level extinction event. And who was there to save us? It wasn't the Traveler. The Traveler didn't do shit. It was Rasputin. Rasputin shot it with 1 million Borsats and blew it up before it actually crashed in full to us, and like essentially nuked the planet. Because if the entire Almighty crashed into the planet, we would have been screwed. The Traveler did nothing there. Fast forward a while to getting to the Witch Queen. We now have the situation where we discover the Traveler is giving the light to the Hive on purpose. Our like mortal sworn enemies, the Hive, including Savathun, who is behind like every scheming, awful thing that we think has happened to us after all of this time. In reality, Savathun may have been protecting us to a certain extent. There's some gray area there, but the idea is that the Traveler, in all its infinite wisdom, gave the light to the Hive, where it would not give the light to the Elixni. And the Elixni are notably pissed about this because not only is the Traveler not giving them light, the Traveler is essentially responsible for the destruction of their homeworld, because the Traveler visited them and then left, which created the whirlwind. And that has upset villains like Aramis, who saw the devastation of the Elixni at the hands of the Traveler, and she wants revenge on it, which I think is pretty understandable. And I think Aramis has been a really interesting character in this whole situation because she seems like she is kind of right a lot of the time, at least in terms of, seeing her motivations. And like, if you were viewing things from her perspective, it's kind of like The Last of Us Part 2. Like when you're viewing things from Abby's perspective, you sort of understand why, Ellie and Joel would be her villains. And from Aramis, you would understand why the Traveler would be her villain. I don't think she so much wants to serve the darkness as she just wants to use the darkness for her own ends, which is to make the Traveler pay. And that is the goal of the Witness as well. But I think she's having a few issues with the Witness as well because it keeps doing things like resurrecting her friends as Scorn, which I don't think she loves. And that leads to this current cutscene where, now that the Witness is here and the Traveler gets scared. The Traveler tries to flee. And I know that there is an interpretation of what the Traveler is doing here that is more generous. I do not take that as a generous interpretation because all of this history implies that the Traveler is nothing but selfish. I believe that the moment the Traveler feels like, okay, my little army isn't getting it done here, darkness is coming, I gotta get the hell out of here. So Aramis is about to shoot it with the Warmind satellites. Rasputin sacrifices himself, blows up all the Warsats, and the Traveler stops. So the Traveler doesn't leave, and Aramis is like, why isn't it leaving? And the Witness, or I think it's a Witness or Callus, somebody says it has nowhere to run. It's essentially surrounded in the system by a bazillion pyramid ships. So some people are saying, oh, because Rasputin was so benevolent, like the Traveler graciously agreed to stay because it saw the sacrifice we made for it, and so it didn't actually leave. No, I think it's trapped. I think it's definitely trapped. And it is very hard for me to think of examples that are not the Traveler doing things for just wholly selfish reasons. The only Traveler-based storyline I can really even think of that indicates some sense of like niceness for its own sake is Crow's storyline, where, well, first it seemed like a dick move that the Traveler was resurrecting Uldren, our greatest nemesis, out of like everybody it could choose to resurrect. I mean, later it did this with Savathun. But, that could be a story of redemption and like, who can you be in your new life? Like, can you start over? Can you start fresh? The whole thing with the Traveler and Crow's sort of special connection is really interesting. Like back in I remember what season Harbinger was or what it was called. Was it Undying? I don't remember. But it was, the Traveler made like a paracausal ship. It made paracausal Hawkmoon. And these are like Crow specific things. Like, yes, we can use them, but they were like, if you read the lore, they were pretty much made for Crow. And there's this idea that like maybe Crow could be the next speaker or something. That hasn't really gone anywhere super relevant. Like Crow has been certainly involved in a lot of the storylines over the past 2 years, but it's not like Crow himself has been some like deciding factor in the whole war or something. It just seems like the Traveler is being weirdly nice to Aldrin / Crow specifically, and then later the same thing for Savathun and her Lucent Brood. It just seems like the Traveler is always, always, always acting in its own self-interest, and anything that it does that appears to be benevolent is mostly just about, like, it's giving us power so we can protect it, so we can further its aim, so we can continue its survival. Not because it wants us to be this evolved civilization and, you know, all of this stuff. And I think the Cloud Striders and Neomuna sort of prove that we probably would have been just fine without the whole Traveler showing up, because the Traveler showed up and brought the darkness, and that brought the collapse. And if the Traveler never showed up in the first place, our whole society might be more like Neomuna, which is this 1980s Miami cyberpunk paradise, or at least it was before the Vex and Cabal showed up. So I think we would have been doing just fine in a lot of ways without the Traveler. And then going forward, we know where this is all going, in the sense that the main conflict between the light and the darkness will end. The conflict between the Traveler and the Witness will end with the final shape. That is the end of the Light and Darkness saga. However, it seems extremely unlikely that we are going to be like, okay, well, no more light or darkness powers. Like, it feels like we have to find a way to embody the light and I guess the darkness without the literal Traveler being here. I believe the Traveler will no longer exist after the final shape, in whatever form that takes. If it's destroyed, if it dissolves into little particles that go inside of us and give us all permanent life, I don't know. Or if it just runs away again for the millionth time, who knows? But I do not think the Traveler will be a significant part of Destiny after the final shape. I think that saga is over, but we will retain light and dark abilities somehow, and the final shape may be how that's sort of explained. But I have always been skeptical of the Traveler. This isn't to say like we should be on the side of the Witness or the Witness is the good guy. No, I don't think either of them are good guys. I think they are both they're playing the flower game with each other, and they're just trying to win, and we are just their pawns. And I think our ultimate goal is to move beyond being pawns and to sort of disband these two entities and sort of make our own fates from here on out. You might call it our destiny. I think that is where the story is heading. But the season of the Seraph cutscene where the Traveler tries to flee and is trapped, like that's the ultimate like FU to us, where the Traveler just, if it could have, fully would have abandoned us and just left us there to be another whirlwind. They say that again, like the Elixir, like it's happening again, the Traveler's leaving, it's another whirlwind, and the whirlwind just wiped out most of Elixir civilization. And it never really recovered from that. And that's what it was going to do with us without a second thought, despite, everything we've sacrificed for it. So, in conclusion, the Traveler sucks. I will be sort of happy to move beyond the Traveler, and I do not miss its giant orb face in the sky. This isn't like the Traveler is evil, it is just extremely selfish, and I think that is really put on display with the finale of Season of the Seraph here, and we will see how that manifests in Lightfall and the final shape. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.